Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, Season 2. Now, Bob, I might be coming in as the introduction, and I might not have the energy level of that other guy, Ben, who's always opened this up, yet it's still an exciting season, and in Season 2, we are focused on...
winning.
There you go. Thank you very much. We are here today to talk to you about winning through two different words, and they are opposites of each other, yet they're almost the exact same of each other when they're typed on my screen in front of me.
Shellfish.
And I get them wrong every time I go to say these words. It's selfless and selfish.
Oh, shellfish.
Shellfish.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm going to say that probably about a dozen times through this episode, Bob, but we're going to have some fun talking about winning by being selfless and winning by being selfish and knowing exactly when each is required.
Because you mentioned these are opposite words,
Yes.
which would make you think like, okay, then if I be one, the opposite of that would be losing, right? If I'm selfish and I can win being selfish, then I would lose being selfless, right? The total opposite, but that's not actually the case.
That isn't.
There are times when we're going to decide, I need to be a little bit selfish right now. And there's other times when we can be a little bit more selfless.
Yes.
Right? And either one of those can be wins depending on the situation and how we're utilizing them.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people out there think we're supposed to be selfless all the time.
Yeah.
Right? We're taught put others first, be nice, be kind, and that's okay. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be a jerk. You're not an ass because you're selfish at times. We're going to get into that and when the times are right for each.
But it does have a negative connotation, the
Sure
word
does.
selfish, right? I mean, I have a 3 and a 4-year-old at home. I'm constantly telling those boys, hey, quit being so selfish. Like, share that thing with your little brother. And so I think we come up in the world constantly being told, don't be so selfish.
Correct.
As
And
if it's a bad thing.
Maybe by the end of this episode, Bob, you'll have a different word you use with your boys so they don't think selfish is a bad thing.
Okay.
All right, so let's look at a definition of these words first.
Okay.
Okay, so Bob, selfish, how can we define selfish?
Oxford, Webster. I'm not sure where you pull these definitions from. Wikipedia, like, I don't know. So selfish, Oxford says, is devoted to or caring only for oneself, concerned primarily with one's own interests, benefits, welfare, etc., regardless of others.
Does sound negative connotation right there.
Yeah. You're like devoted to yourself, right?
Me.
Like
It's all about me.
Yeah, selfish.
All right. What about the other side? Bob, give us the definition for selfless.
So shellfish? Selfless.
We should pay a fine every time we
Right,
say shellfish.
Having little or no concern for oneself, especially with regard to fame, position, money, etc. Unselfish. They literally call out in the definition, it's the opposite of selfish, it's
Right.
being unselfish.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing because while they're different, both can work when it comes to winning. Okay, so Bob, I was doing some research on this. I've been holding on to this one for a little while and did some research on it when we were going to talk about it originally. And from a Yale study, so I mean, I don't know, I didn't finish college. Yale's a pretty smart place, right? So from a Yale study, they found that humans are not hardwired to be selfish or cooperative. We're not hardwired one way or the other. We can be either one or both, depending on the situation.
So I'm a little bit surprised by that. I would have assumed that humans are hardwired to be selfish simply because way back in the caveman days, we would have needed to to get things, right? To get food, right? And in order to survive, I would have had to, with a shortage of resources, I might have needed to be selfish. But I guess the flip side of that would say in order to survive, I probably needed my tribe to help me out, right?
Yep.
And so I had to be a little bit selfless there.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? There's no good or bad when it comes to these words. And I think, Bob, you mentioned it early in the episode. You talked about the negative connotation that comes with being selfish, that there's no good or bad when it comes to either. Someone maybe that is totally selfish is going to have issues.
Yeah.
The exact same way as someone who's going to be totally selfless. They're going to have issues as well.
I think about this is the extremes, right? Like you're saying there's no good or bad. You can kind of be either. But if you were the extreme of either one of those two things, you were always thinking about yourself no matter what the situation or the scenario, that's going to cause problems.
Absolutely.
Just like if you were extreme on the other side, you literally, no matter what, you let people walk on you. It didn't matter. You were always, doing what everybody else needed, never what you needed. That if that was, extreme, that would be a problem too.
You ever gone out to the mall or the store or wherever it is with the family, and you get to the door first, and being the good gentleman and good husband and good father that you are, Bob, you open the door for your wife and your kids to go walking through. You ever found yourself standing there like 3 minutes later because everybody keeps coming through and you're
Yeah.
being completely selfless as you stand there, but meanwhile your family's now lost in the store because they didn't even notice you weren't behind them?
Yeah, I also, I'm not gonna lie. If I hold the door open for you and you walk through and you don't say thank you, I am just, you have daggers in the back of your head right now from me. I'm so irritated when I do, not that I expect, I guess, for thank you, but like, who does that?
Lesson learned, everybody. If Bob Stewart ever holds a door open for you,
Just like
say thank you.
If I let you in traffic, I better get a little wave. You know what I'm saying? Like, if not, I am totally bad mouthing you from behind the car.
Are you
Like,
planning to cut me off as soon as possible too?
I don't know. No, maybe in my 20s I would have been planning to cut you off. I'm a little bit more.
You're better at that
tame
now.
these
All
days.
right. Some emotional intelligence has caught up with Bob.
Just
All right.
just a smidge.
Just enough, right? So, Bob, I got a quote from you from Proverbs. I mean, a lot of us are readers, and whether you've read the Bible or you haven't read the Bible, there are some amazing quotes in Proverbs there for you. When you have given nothing, ask for nothing.
Interesting.
Yeah, right. So when you have given nothing, when you haven't been selfless, ask for nothing. Don't think you can be selfish.
Yeah.
Right? They go together. There's one here that you had gotten from the Dalai Lama. I mean, there's a guy we love hearing great quotes from. What did the Dalai Lama say?
Said our prime purpose in this life is to help others. And if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them.
Interesting. Right?
Yeah.
So our prime purpose to help others. So we are here to be selfless, to help others. But at the same time, if you're not going to do it, just get out of their way.
Yeah.
All right. And then here's a quote, and I want everyone to hear this quote because you might hear it again later in the episode. Edward Albert said, sometimes you have to be selfish to be selfless. What are your thoughts immediately when I just throw that quote at you, Bob?
I think that quote, like, to me, I think, like, I have to be in a position myself. If I want to help somebody else, I have to be in like a pretty sound position myself, right? If I'm running around all day just being selfless all the time, I'm always thinking about other people's needs and my own needs are not being met. I'm not taking the time to worry about my health. I'm not taking the time to make sure I'm good. It's going to be really hard for me to go out and help other people if I'm not good. So sometimes you have to be, and I'm assuming this is what he means, right? Sometimes I have to take care of myself first, and that will allow me then to go out and be able to help other people.
Yeah, when you're a mess, I probably don't want your help.
No, you don't. I can promise.
Even when you're not a mess, sometimes we're not sure we want your help there, Bob. But let's look at being selfless first, because again, positive and negative connotations that come with it. We think selfless is the good thing to be. Bob, talk to us a little bit about being selfless.
Okay, so these are some traits that we kind of collected around the idea of like, what does it mean to be selfless? So selfless shows no judgment of others.
Okay. So you're saying that when you come walking in wearing that I'm not sitting here judging you. Or
Sure.
when you miss an opportunity or an appointment that I don't go out and I don't judge you. That's me still being selfless. You might not even know that I've done that, but that's me being selfless by saying, hey, I'm not going to judge you right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another one?
Selfish is giving of time, money, items, etc. It's the give in Win, Make, Give.
Okay, so being selfless is giving. So
Yeah.
helping others, and we've talked about that on many episodes.
Well, and we had the whole episode where Ben broke down, and Dave maybe is telling me we haven't even dropped this episode yet. I'm not sure if you'll have heard this already or you'll hear it coming up. But we had a whole episode where we talked about like how do you give and what are the stages of giving, right? And one of the very first stages of giving that most of us don't think about is giving our time, right? Well, I don't have the money to give to this organization, but time is also a way that you can be selfless, right? It's just giving that time.
Yeah, or those things. Think about those things around your house that you don't need that you're about to get rid of. I mean, when Nita and I moved across the country, you can be sure we were very selfless and gave away a lot of things, hopefully, that have helped other people.
Yeah.
Okay, so another one here, Bob. Selfless is being focused on others and listening first. What do you take from that?
So I look at many of the winners in my life, and I'll just use Ben. He's not here today, right? He left us to our own accords here, and so
that was his mistake.
Yeah, bad Ben. I think about he's like a master question asker.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we talk about this all the time, but it forces him. One of the powers of questions, he's had us read the book, The 7 Powers of Questions. One of the powers of questions is it forces you to listen, right? And Ben is one of the most selfless guys and he comes off as being this very selfless individual. Now he takes time for himself, right? He's got that other side that's okay and good, the selfish side. But he's so selfless. And I think it comes out of this idea that he gets focused on you and you feel like he's listening to you when you're in a conversation with him. But a lot of that's predicated on the questions he asks, right? And so he's able to ask these great questions that gets to whatever his objective is. And ultimately that's where his wins come from. But it's through this like selfless act of listening to you, right? He's asking the questions to get to his agenda. But ultimately you look at that and go, wow, this guy, right? He's like totally interested in me. He's very selfless.
You know, Bob, we just recorded an episode on Serve for the 15-point plan. And for those of you who haven't checked it out yet, please jump over to the Win, Make, Give podcast network and go to our website, winmakegive.com, where you can then find the 15-point plan or just search 15-point plan wherever you get your podcast. We just did one on service, and that was one of the things that you can do in the 15-point plan for serving was just listening, asking great questions and listening, and it's being selfish.
Shellfish.
Yes, it's being selfless is what service really comes down to being. So gosh, this is going to be a fun episode.
Dave's going to have to cut this one up.
No, he's not. He's going to let us crash and burn with this. And Dave, we deserve it. Selfless is acting with a thought of doing the right thing. So how often do you act with a thought of doing the right thing? And how often do we jump into something because what's in it for me?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I think the more that you take action because it's the right thing, probably the better those outcomes end up being. And the more that you just jump in, you know, because you see something in there for yourself, probably the less successful those outcomes end up being for you.
And then Bob, here's one at the end here on this list of selfless things. And selfless is having empathy and compassion.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one for a lot of people. It's an easy one for some people, but it's something we could all be working on so that we could be a lot more selfless.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to give of yourself to somebody else when you can put yourself in their shoes, right? You can understand how valuable that time you're going to give them might end up being for them, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna realize more effectively how valuable that money that you're donating might end up helping that person if you knew what it would mean to them by being in their shoes, right? So that's what empathy is, right? We put ourselves in their shoes, and so I mean, you definitely have those empathy and compassion wrapped up in being selfless. And I think that's probably one of the more obvious ones here, right? Like, I think when you think of being selfless, that's what people think of being compassionate and empathetic. And
see, it's interesting you say that, because if I were to look at the list, the two that would jump out to me, Bob, would be giving my time, money, and items, right? That's selfless to me. I'm giving things to other people. And then the fourth one that came up here, acting with the thought of doing the right thing, holding the door open. It's just the right thing to do for someone who's carrying other things, or, you know, that I'm taught to do is the right thing when there's an older lady or something walking into the store. Those jump to me. I can do those without empathy.
Are you ageist? You won't open the door for a young buck child?
All right, I'll open the door for them. For the little kid, I absolutely will. You know, but I do those without empathy. I do those without compassion. I just do those because I was always taught they're the right thing to do.
You said open the door for the little old lady who was carrying something, which means you put yourself into her shoes of being yourself carrying something and thinking to yourself, well, I sure would love if somebody opened that door for me, right? So there is some empathy in these most selfless acts we take, I think. No,
Bob, you're making me sound like a nice person or something here. Ruining my image or something with this compassion, this empathy. Let's move on. Hurry. All right. So here are 4 things. When we did our research, Bob, 4 things that being selfless can actually do. And the first one was they can improve our relationships.
Yeah.
That's an obvious one, right? If I'm not going to judge you, if I'm going to give to you, if I'm going to be there for you, be compassionate and empathetic, I got to imagine my relationship with you would get stronger.
Yeah. I'm going to look at Chad like, man, he's the guy, right? I know he's going to help me out if I need it, or, absolutely.
Okay. Number 2, it'll keep you happier and actually healthier. It brings inner peace and satisfaction, which will lower your cortisol levels, which is better for your heart. So did you realize that being selfless actually can make you happier and healthier?
I think we all kind of know this, right? I mean, there's a certain like giving is when you give something, what your time, your money, we donate
Skills,
to
all
the
those things. Yep.
yeah. There's a certain like you don't do it for them, you do it for you, right? I mean, I don't. That's how I feel about giving, right? Now, in a perfect world, you get to give and you get to see their reaction, but most of the time that you're giving, you don't get to see that reaction. You
That's
don't
true.
get to see the impact that it potentially had,
Yep.
right? So in that case, it has to be about giving for the sake of giving, but that still is incredibly fulfilling. It's really satisfying. Ben told the story about going out and doing the scholarship at his high school and going back, and he told that whole story about his friend taking him there and doing that, and there was happiness in that, right? His friend was so excited he got to do that he went back and did it again himself the next year. Now, the fact that it actually has like a physical impact on your heart health, for example, right? Because of these lower cortisone levels. Yeah, let's do it. Let's keep being selfless.
Okay, let's keep being selfless. All right, number 3, it can...
Selfish?
Nope, selfless. I had it that time. Number 3, it can change your perspective and actually help you solve problems. So when you put others first, when you put yourself in their shoes, when you're more empathetic, when you're more compassionate, when you're listening, it's going to give you a change of perspective.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a really big deal, right? Like most of us walk around in the world from our perspective, which is
it's the only perspective we have.
Right. It's common and obvious, and it's probably the least, requires the least energy.
Yep.
Like brain power even, right? Energy in your brain to like you just come from your perspective. But if we can get outside of that perspective, a lot of times, like when we when we have like challenges in our software product, let's say, like we will have our team go and do that thing just to like literally put yourself in those people's shoes, right? And you start to make decisions, different decisions. When you have to go do the thing, and our software developers have to go do the thing that they're building this tool for, when they have to do it and they have to kind of get in somebody else's seat to see what that outcome would be, that changes their perspective, and it gives us a whole kind of new way to look at things sometimes.
And Bob, if everybody out there says the same thing you said, which was, I think we kind of know a lot of these things. If we can just remind them, being selfless can change your perspective and solve problems. Without getting into it, there's probably nothing our world needs more than that right now.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's get to the fourth one. It improves relationships. It keeps you happier and healthier. It can change your perspective to solve problems, and it's going to create new connections.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to be selfless to you. You're going to start introducing me to people, or someone's going to see it, and I'm going to all of a sudden new connections are going to show up in life.
I think about, one of the more, look, all these things, like, you do things, and a lot of times they come off as selfless, but there's often some selfish aspect tied up in them, right? Like, I think about when Ben and I went around the country and we had this thing called Rain Camp, and we went 36 cities over 14 months. And we were talking to real estate in our industry we were in at the time, to real estate agents, 500 in a room. And for us, getting up and we were teaching Ben's business. Here's everything we're doing, kind of opening the kimono. It was a very selfless endeavor. Now there was some, out of that would come some business opportunities and some different things. But the number of connections that we forged over that time, those are connections that 10, 12 years later are still paying off in our world.
Yeah.
Right. And it was simply from going out there and sharing something that we were passionate about, but in a selfless manner. Like, we showed up, they had to pay to be there, but that was just to cover the cost of the building that we were renting or whatever. Right. It wasn't like a profit center for us. We were just getting out there and we wanted other people to be successful doing what we were doing.
Yeah.
It was selfless, but it led to all these amazing relationships.
Sure. And I think you made a great point in there that behind everything that's selfless, there's probably a little selfish in there somewhere. And since he's not here, we can keep talking about Ben all we want, and he's not going to throw things at us. I remember how I met Ben. He was being very selfless. And he had offered to come teach a class in any city in the country, whoever gave him the most Facebook posts. And we didn't win. Yet someone who knew Ben, had heard him at your rain camp actually, came running up to me and said, you got to get this guy to come teach out here. And I did what I do to track him down and figure out who he was. And I managed to somehow get past Jolene, the gatekeeper. And he was very selfless about saying, yeah, I'll come. No cost. I'll just come. But then I finally found out the selfish behind it was he wanted lunch with somebody who was doing more business than he was so he could learn from them. But then at the same time, it created that new connection between Ben and I that now 12, 13 years later, here we are still sitting together.
I think those connections you make from that, like when you're being selfless, are really powerful, right? They're, you're establishing a connection with somebody for the first time in an environment where they look at you as a giver.
Right.
And there's a lot of power in that. A lot of the people that and this is where that selfish aspect comes in again, because we talked about if you're extreme in either one of these things, you're extremely selfless and you're never looking for anything in any scenario that's going to benefit you. That's not going to be good. You're going to get walked over and you're not going to, ultimately win. Right. And so for us, all the times that we've been selfless, there's always something potentially that we're looking to maybe, benefit on that from down the road. Right.
Yes.
But it's kind of like The Godfather. There's that, the scene in The Godfather where he's his daughter's wedding. And he's like, someday, and it might not be ever, right? Or like, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to ask for a favor. It's one of those
That was the
things.
worst Marlon Brando impersonation ever.
You know what I'm talking
Dave, somehow
about.
Go cut in the reel something to make
Marlon
Bob
Brando?
sound
But
better.
you ever seen that, right? It's like, it's this idea that you owe me something now.
Correct.
Right. And so not that we've got this running catalog in our head of all the people that owe us something, but there's a lot of people out there over the years that we've acted selfless towards, and whether we even remember that they owe us something, they remember, right? They remember that, not that they owe you something, but they're willing to step up and be selfless back if you would ever need it at some point. So I love that. I love the great connections one. Selflessness can lead to some really great connections, some awesome relationships.
You said two things in there I want to dive into. One, right there at the end, you were saying there's a little bit of both, right? We have to be both. So here at Win Make Give, we're being selfless and we're giving. We're giving to charity. Based on the number of listens any episode gets in its first 30 days since it's launched, we are going to give a donation to a charity. The charities are being chosen by you. We are giving. We are being selfless and saying, let us donate to the charities. Now, the ask that comes from it on the other side, like you talked about, because there's always that ask at some point. Maybe there isn't. But for us, the ask is there. It's, can you share the episode?
Yeah.
Because then we can be even more selfless and give even more away because more people listen.
Yeah.
So we'd ask you to share this episode with as many people as possible. The other thing, Bob, is you were talking about the extremes, right? We can't be extreme one end or extreme the other end. If we are extremely selfless, here's some caution for all of you out there, all right? Selflessness is a life of sacrifice, of duty, and always deciding that you and your needs don't matter. Okay, we will become the stepladder others will use to get ahead, and it is the surest way to get left behind and forgotten, all used up, and have nothing left to give if we are extremely selfless.
Yeah. I mean, I think about this on my calendar, Chad. Like, when Ben's got this thing where he suggests that we go in and whatever we have on our calendar today, we clear half of it off.
Right.
Right. With the idea being what? That you're going to take that time to be selfish and work on your business or work on moving your own finances ahead or your relationships ahead or whatever that might be. But for you.
Yep.
Right. I've struggled with this my entire career. Like,
does this explain why the other day I had 2 interviews lined up for the Win Make Give podcast and you only made 1 because you eliminated 50%?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it could be that I allowed somebody else onto my calendar in an act of selflessness.
Right.
Yeah, I can help you. Sure, I can help you. Sure, I can help you. And I have some days my calendar is totally taken up by other people's
issues,
other people's priorities, other people's, they want me to help them win.
Yep.
And I've spent a lot of time in my career trying to find the right balance between being selfless and being selfish. And probably most of my career I've spent, and the days when I wasn't winning, the days when I felt like I was busy, but I didn't actually get anything done, most of those days are 100% selfless days, right? You're just working on other people's problems.
Right.
Finding that balance is super important.
And I have access to your calendar, Bob, and I'll tell you something I see on your calendar many days of the week, not every day, yet many days of the week, is lunch with your wife.
Yeah.
You are being selfish and blocking off that time, so it sits there and reminds you, no, I can't help someone during this hour.
That's right.
So that my wife and I have time.
Sometimes you'll come in and say, hey, the only time we could get this guy is during that time. And sometimes I'll say, no, sorry, man.
Right.
And sometimes I'll say, okay, if we can't move it any other time, like I'll be a little bit more selfless here and my wife and I'll have to find that hour somewhere else. But yeah.
Okay. So let's look at the other side of this. We've been talking about being selfless, being selfless, being selfless. Said that 3 times to make sure I could get it. Now let's be selfish.
Okay, that one's easier. That word's actually easier to say.
Except when you say shellfish.
That's true.
Right. So let's be selfish. What if we actually changed the word, Bob? What if we didn't say selfish? What if we said self-caring? Would it sound a lot better if I said we're being selfless or self-caring? Now all of a sudden it doesn't have the negative connotation.
For what
right?
we're talking about here, I think self-caring is a really good phrase to replace selfish with.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
When my 4-year-old is grabbing his brother's toy though, and the brother go grab something else, and Chase grabs the next toy, that's being selfish. Chase doesn't need the second toy for self-care.
You're absolutely right. He probably does not. Batman can get along without Robin for a little while or something, right? All right. So, Bob, have you ever been on an airplane? I mean, I know the answer to that. You ever been on an airplane?
I haven't been on an airplane in over a year.
Okay. Yet you remember what it's like to be on an airplane.
Yeah, just barely, but I'm looking forward to being on one soon.
Okay, Bob, the masks fall from the sky. Who are you supposed to put the mask on first?
Yourself.
Yeah. You're supposed to be selfish. Because if you're not selfish at that moment, or to use the term, if you're not self-caring at that moment, you're not going to be able to be selfless and help anybody else because you're going to have passed out.
That's such a good. Did you think this one up yourself?
Like, thanks, Bob.
I don't. Who?
What do you think I Googled and it came up?
Did you help on this deck, bud? That's a good one. I mean, that is like the epitome of the perfect time to be selfish.
You
right?
have to be selfish there because if you're not, there's no opportunity to then become selfless after the fact.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to share with you a quote about being selfish. And Bob, you might recognize it.
Okay.
And I warned everyone to pay attention because it's from Edward Albert. And he says, sometimes you have to be selfish to be selfless. So now we're seeing it from the other side where, yes, we have to put ourselves first. So Bob, I gave the example of the airplane, but give me an idea of, because we did some research on it, give me an idea of a good time to actually be selfish.
I think one of the best times would be if I need help.
Okay.
Like in whatever that might be, by the way. Like, so let's take from the work perspective, right? If I've got, let's say I have a project, Ben says, hey, here's a project, I need you to run out and do that, and and I'm getting blocked by something, that's a great time for me to be selfish, right?
Sure.
That's a great time for me to try to get into somebody's lane and have them help me. That's generally, back to my calendar filling up, that's generally what is on my calendar. A bunch of people that they're being selfish for the right reason. They want to move their business ahead. So they're trying to get on my calendar for me to help them with whatever that thing is that they need to get unblocked and out of the way.
Yep.
So when you need help would probably be the first time that I think that's a great opportunity to be a little bit selfish, right?
And let's take the moment for the public service announcement, right? How many times do we need help when we don't reach out to somebody? And I'm not even talking about work anymore. I'm talking about we're dealing with depression. We're having health things, and gosh, especially, and I'm not being sexist on this, but us men just will not go talk to someone when we're having health issues. We're, I'm fine, just roll it around in the dirt, I'll be okay, right? Mm-hmm. We need help in many areas in our life. Sometimes it's a therapist, sometimes it's a doctor, sometimes it's just a friend to talk to because of what we're dealing with.
I've shared this on the podcast before, Chad. I see a therapist every Tuesday night from 5 to 6 p.m. I'm being selfish. Like, I'm worrying about me and my mental, well-being, and that's why, right? I need help with it. I need help to keep everything in order so that we can keep coming back here and delivering fun podcasts. But that's a time for me to be selfish.
Okay, how about another one?
When you need to get away.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I need someone to watch my dog and my cat. I got to be selfish and say, hey, someone's got to watch them because I need to get away. I got to get out of here.
And I need a break.
Yeah.
Right?
We've all needed a break. And the question is, are we being selfish and taking it when we need it? And you mentioned earlier, Ben is the most selfless guy I probably know, and many of our listeners probably know if you actually know Ben, right? You ask, he'll give you a shirt off his back if that's what he needs to. Yet, boy, nobody is better at being selfish when he needs to get away.
Yeah.
Because he'll just send a text out to all of the small group of us and say, I'm off the grid.
Like off the grid, like he takes a satellite phone so that like Aaron can call him on the satellite phone. She's like the only one that has the bat line to him or whatever, but he's like super selfish in those moments, which he deserves,
Absolutely.
which he's earned.
Yep.
Right. But he knows, and he's really good at this. And a lot of times these are unplanned, right? He's just like getting to that point where, man, all that selflessness is starting to build up. And he's like, I need a little bit of me time.
Yep.
Right. And he heads off into the woods and he takes the satellite phone and he's, he locks it down. Like, and good for him, by the way.
Absolutely. We all should be a little more selfish when we need that time.
I'm horrible at this. My wife and I are going to do a vacation, and some people might have some opinions out there about that, but I don't give a rat's ass. We're going on vacation here pretty soon.
Yay.
And I'm turning everything off.
Good for you.
Like I'm turning, and I haven't always done that, right? Sometimes we think, I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to take this vacation, but we're not really. We're all being selfless. We're trying to help our clients. We're trying to help our colleagues, right? And we're on the phone while we're sitting at the pool. Like this is going to be selfish time for me, Chad. I'm shutting it down.
Good. And we'll make sure to block that time on your calendar so everybody else knows you're being selfish and let you be. So again, just kind of build off that almost to be, right? If we said one was when you need help, two is when you need to get away, 2B might be just when you need some alone time. Because it might not be as massive as I need to get off the grid. It might not be as massive as I need to go. But boy, it might be that person just walked by you and didn't say thank you holding the door open. That, Bob, you need to be selfish for a minute and go take some alone time in the electronics department before you chase them down in the store.
Chad, this is so you're married, but you don't have small children. You have an older daughter who's off into college.
She's off
now.
in college now.
You had small children at one point, but when you
No. She just started already at this age. It was easier.
She seemed like a stellar individual, so it doesn't surprise me that she just came out at 18, smart, and selling more than anybody else. But when you're married and you have small children, this is a constant. Like my wife and I are always trying to find little time for each one of us to individually get away and just have that hour, right? Like every night, my wife. She takes 2 showers a day, but she takes one at night. And that time when she goes up that's her time, right? She locks her door. The boys know they got to leave mom alone for that 45 minutes. That's just her being selfish because she just likes that time to unwind from the day and kind of get into bed mode and whatever. But we definitely need to do that sometimes.
All right. Number 3, Bob, on our list, when you have friends that don't understand the give take. And everybody out there has that friend. They understand the take, right? They know the take. They don't understand the give take. So sometimes we have to be selfish and force the give from our friend in that, and we have to take every now and then. Otherwise, like we warned earlier, we get walked all over. We become the stepladder to them. We get drained of everything within us.
Those become extremes, right?
Yeah.
We're in this relationship where it's this extreme taker, and we end up having to become the extreme giver.
Yep.
And those things they never end well.
Okay. Now, Bob, again, a hard one for men. The next one on the list for us is?
When you're sick.
Yeah. You got to be selfish when you're sick.
Yeah.
Right? We want someone to take care of us. I don't know. Again, I speak only for men because I am one. So we all want our mommy, right? We become sick. It doesn't matter how old you are. Well, I want my mommy, right? I mean, that's what we all end up doing at that. And we have to be selfish about that. You can't give. You've got to get your body better, your mind better, your health better. You got to become a little selfish.
I think what ends up happening there too, like my wife, she's, we have small kids. A lot of times mom ends up becoming the most selfless person in the house, and when my wife gets sick, because she is so selfless, she never takes the right time to get better. So her sicknesses last. Like she have these colds that last for a month or two, right? When you're like, man, if she would have just taken 3 days and just focused on feeling better, she might not have had this lingering sickness. You're a health guy, so that that's a thing, right? Like if we take the time to really recover from, that cold or that sickness, it's not going to linger like these things sometimes do.
Absolutely. And then the last one on the list, Bob, is when you need to end something.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that on the podcast many times, about the right time to quit something or ending something the right way. You got to be selfish when it comes to that, because if we're selfless, we're going to end up in a relationship, whether that's a couple relationship or whether it's a working relationship. there's always going to be an ending that has to happen. And if we stay selfless, we're going to stay in something that's not a good situation for us. We have to become selfish and break it off, whatever that relationship is, even if it hurts.
Yeah, at work, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, there are, in the most extreme cases, there are parents that have had to cut children off who have drug addictions, you know?
It's horrible, yes.
Horrible, right? Like, but they literally, the drug addicted, a lot of times adult child becomes this absolute taker, right? And ultimately that parent has to make probably, and my wife and I watch a lot of those kind of shows, you know?
Okay.
These parents, they have to make the most heart-wrenching decisions ever. And ultimately the decision is actually to the benefit of the person, the drug addict, right? But they're having to be selfish and say, I can't be in this anymore.
I can't go down that path
to
with
this
you, right?
any longer. Like, so yeah, absolutely. When you need to end something, that's a great time to be selfish. But those can be some really, really hard decisions to make.
Yeah. Okay. Preventing burnout is important. And if we never take time for ourselves, we're going to just crash and burn. That burnout's going to happen. We're going to have that. And we're going to either find ourselves really sick, we're going to find ourselves quitting and running away from things, or we're going to find ourselves in a deep depression we can't get ourselves out of, Bob.
And Chad, you know, as we kind of wrap up here, and you obviously wrap these things up, and so I'm not going to step in there, but really it's about finding the balance here, right?
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance between giving up too much of your time, giving up too much of yourself, and holding some back so that you can have that time, that energy, that space to work on your business, to work on yourself, to work on your relationships. And you're constantly trying to balance the two, right? Because literally everything you do is one of those two things. You're either acting in selfishness or you're acting in selflessness, right? And it's that constant balancing act that you're trying to play.
That's a great point you bring up to wrap this one up, Bob. We want to remind you out there, it's okay to be selfish.
That's right.
It's okay to be selfless.
Please do.
Just don't go to the extremes and stay there for extended periods of time, because neither is going to be the right place for you to be. The right place for you to be is here at the Win, Make, Give podcast.
See what he did there, Dave? Did you see that?
Did you all see that, right? Right here at the Win, Make, Give podcast, where we hope you also are joining us on our Facebook group, facebook.com/group/Win, Make, Give, where we can continue the conversations. We really hope you'll be selfless and share this episode with someone and let them be selfish by taking the information in. Until our next episode, remember, do good.